Never assume motion in space is random. Never assume velocity is innocent, because sometimes the most subtle change in speed reveals the darkest secret. Make sure you subscribe, because what you're about to hear tonight is one of those stories that humanity still doesn't know how to process. So let's settle in, get comfortable, breathe, and let your mind drift into the quiet vacuum beyond Earth. Because 3I Atlas is not behaving like anything we have ever seen. And the deeper researchers go into the data, the more uncomfortable this entire story gets. 3I Atlas didn't just appear. It cut into our solar system like a blade from an origin point that no human lab has simulated. It's been tracked by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California, the European Southern Observatory in Chile, the Vera Rubin Observatory's survey planning models, and even some legacy Arecibo radio data has been re-examined because of it. And yet no one can fit this thing into a box. And tonight, you're going to understand why. Because 3I Atlas is now showing signs of non-gravitational acceleration, which means something is pushing it, something that cannot be explained by just the sun's pull or planets or the normal orbital mechanics we teach in school. This object is gaining speed in ways that match nothing in our textbooks. But here's where the story starts feeling even stranger. This same behavior once happened with Oumuamua in 2017. Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb still talks about that incident inside the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. That subtle acceleration Oumuamua had tiny but undeniable. Back then it was brushed off. Probably gas venting, probably dust. Except there was no gas detected, no dust plume, no comet tail, no exhaust. And now we have another interstellar object doing the exact same thing. But 3I Atlas is doing it louder, stronger, more obvious. The speed at perihelion, the closest point to the Sun, will reach around 68 kilometers per second. That's faster than any natural visitor we've measured this way. And right now, as it travels, the calculations published through NASA JPL's Horizon system show that the numbers don't line up with purely gravitational math. Not exactly. Something else is in that equation. And that's why this story is different. Now take a slow breath. Let your mind picture it, drifting there, crossing the inner system, its massive green coma spreading wider than the diameter of Jupiter's magnetosphere, glowing with carbon dioxide that shouldn't be there in those quantities, at least not in the way Earth-borne comets behave. The James Webb Space Telescope's NIRSPEC instrument has been pointed in this region. Webb doesn't confirm answers, but it confirms confusion. Spectra don't match expected models. 3I Atlas is accelerating, and scientists don't know why. 3I Atlas is accelerating, and nobody can explain what force is behind it. And that is where this shifts from interesting space news into something that starts feeling like a page torn out of a classified briefing. Because when objects move in ways that don't match gravity, it usually means one of two things. Either something internal is pushing them, or something external is interacting with them. And the idea that something external could be influencing 3I Atlas is not fake sci-fi. NASA JPL has entire published research on radiation pressure. Solar sailing is real physics. Light can move mass. Distributed plasma around the sun can push dust in strange ways. Stanford researchers like Ronald Bracewell wrote about interstellar communication probes 60 years ago. So the idea that artificial motion could exist in space is not new. It's simply uncomfortable. And that's the part nobody likes to say out loud. Because if 3I Atlas is accelerating non-gravitationally, it suggests it's not just drifting. It's correcting. It's adjusting. Like something that isn't simply falling toward the sun but navigating through the solar system. Astronomers working with Keck Observatory in Hawaii have already noted that the coma around 3I Atlas is growing faster than expected. Polarization data from telescopes in Italy and Chile shows electric double-layer behavior inside the plasma envelope around it. That kind of structure doesn't just happen. You normally only get that where high-energy ions are interacting or being organized. And the shape, the geometry of the coma, it's not evenly spherical. It's lopsided, structured, like something inside is creating gradients. Picture that for a moment. Something in deep space, with a coma half the size of the sun, creating patterns inside its own plasma field, pushing itself faster at a time when we can't even observe it directly because it's hidden behind the find. Solar glare. 3I Atlas is now in the exact region where Earth is blind. And that blind spot happens at the exact same time its non-gravitational push becomes most noticeable. That timing is not random. Even the Vera Rubin Observatory's simulation team admitted if an interstellar object wanted to change course undetected, the perfect time to do it is right now. When it's directly behind the sun from our point of view, this is the part that keeps researchers awake at night. Because this is the moment right now where 3I Atlas could change trajectory, accelerate harder, release something, or split into multiple objects, and we wouldn't know until weeks later. And you have to admit, there is something chilling about that. Because space isn't silent anymore. We have multiple cases: Oumuamua in 2017, Comet Borisov in 2019, and now 3I Atlas, where the normal rules don't hold. And there's a pattern people don't talk about openly. Each visitor is more dramatic than the last. It's almost like escalation, almost like someone or something is testing how close they can get without being noticed or without being challenged. And 3I Atlas might be the first one where the mask slips, because this time the deviation from gravity is not subtle, it's bold, and it's happening exactly when our instruments can't see it. Which raises a question that nobody wants to answer out loud. What if this is intentional? If 3I Atlas is accelerating non-gravitationally, then we have stepped into a territory where something might be acting like a ship, not a rock. And I don't say that in a clickbait way. I say that because every respectable institution that has weighed in on this NASA JPL, Harvard Smithsonian, the European Southern Observatory, has one common sentence buried inside their official reports. Non-gravitational acceleration requires mechanism. That's the part most viewers never read. Physics doesn't do magic. Something must cause it. Either 3I Atlas is venting material like a jet and we just can't see it, or it is responding to a force field in a way comets have never been seen doing, or there is internal structure that can modulate momentum. And that last scenario is where people start to sweat in silence. Because that is exactly the same scenario Avi Loeb from Harvard suggested for Oumuamua in 2017 when he referenced solar sail theory and compared the acceleration to light pressure propulsion. But 3I Atlas is even weirder. The polarization data, especially the negative polarization curve published in Italian polarimetry logs, shows double-layer plasma effects no comet has ever shown. It's like the coma isn't just a cloud. It behaves like it has circuitry, layers, separation of charge. That is what a dusty plasma does when there is order, not chaos inside. That doesn't happen for fun. That means either complex electrochemical structures are forming inside of 3I Atlas, or something inside 3I Atlas is maintaining those layers on purpose. And when you step back for a second, the timing looks suspiciously like choreography. It passes Mars on October 3rd. It hits perihelion on October 29th. It becomes completely unobservable due to solar glare during that window. And the non-gravitational push becomes most noticeable during that same window. It's almost perfect. If you wanted to change direction, you would do it exactly then. And it gets even stranger when you remember this. The coma of 3I Atlas is now half the size of the Sun. Half. The Sunday. That is not a cute little comet. That is a planetary scale shroud of gas, dust, and plasma moving in formation around an object that might be only 0.2 to 50 kilometers wide. That is like a fly wrapped in a storm the size of a star. And the part nobody wants to think about is this: a structure that large could hide anything inside. We would never see it. Not with Hubble, not with Webb, not even with the solar coronagraphs used at ESA or NASA. Right now, 3I Atlas could be splitting apart, opening up, releasing smaller objects, or aligning itself for some maneuver, and we wouldn't have the slightest clue until December. The public thinks astronomers are in control, but right now, we are blind. And this is where the tension silently grows, behind the scenes. Because professional astronomers, the ones with real access, the ones at places like the Vera Rubin Observatory in Chile and the Keck Observatory in Hawaii, they're not speaking openly anymore. They're only leaking in fragments. A radio astronomer in Arizona who will never put his name public said one short sentence on a closed webinar that got clipped before it could spread. 3I Atlas is behaving like it's steering. That's it. No explanation, no elaboration, just that. And that line is more terrifying than any conspiracy theory because it didn't come from TikTok or Reddit. It came from someone who actually sits inside the datasets. And the crazy part is the acceleration curves match that idea. The push is subtle, but it's directed. You can see it in infrared tracking. You can see it in the residuals. You can see it in the deviation from the dominant gravitational vector. It's not drifting randomly. It's drifting with preference. Objects don't prefer. Objects don't choose a more efficient path. Ships do. The entire concept of non-gravitational acceleration means something else is doing work, something we don't see, something that wasn't supposed to be measurable, but now is. And the part that should make every person listening shift in their seat is that 3I Atlas is not doing this far away, outside the solar system. It's doing this in our backyard. Inside the orbits of planets, inside the heliosphere, Inside the region where sunlight is strong, plasma density is higher, and magnetic fields get messy exactly where a machine would harvest energy if it was using the sun as a resource or as a battery. And remember, 3I Atlas is currently moving at around 68 kilometers per second near perihelion. That is the fastest confirmed speed of an interstellar visitor. Nothing natural accelerates like that on its way out of a solar system unless something is pushing it or pulling it or coordinating it. This object is not coasting, it is behaving. And I don't think anybody is ready for the moment the data becomes undeniable, because if the acceleration continues to increase as it rounds perihelion, then we will know this isn't just gas pressure or ice venting or thermal, outgassing. We will know that 3I Atlas is doing something physical with motive, almost like it's moving towards something, or away from something, or activating something. We're not even 25% into the full story yet. And the deeper we go, the stranger this gets, because the green glow that's now being detected around 3I Atlas, that glow is the part everyone online is misunderstanding. People think green equals comet. No, that's old comet logic. Most comets glow green because of diatomic carbon C2 breaking apart under solar radiation. But 3I Atlas is not showing the normal carbon signature. Measurements from polarization sweeps, especially the European Southern Observatory polarization, runs from late August, show that the coma is behaving like a dusty plasma envelope, not like a gas-rich carbon halo. Meaning, that glow is not from molecules breaking apart. That glow is from electric charge movement. And this is why the plasma physicists, not the comet experts, are the most nervous about this object. Because dusty plasma structures, they store information. They can carry patterns. They can encode fields. They are used in controlled physics experiments at places like Stanford Plasma Diagnostics Lab because they can mimic memory, actual computational memory inside charged particles. When Stefan Burns said the coma is now almost half the diameter of the sun, that's not poetic exaggeration, that is a real measured estimate. Half the sun's diameter is not something a normal comet does. That means this object is interacting with a solar magnetic environment at a structural level. Think about that. 3I Atlas is literally charging up using the Sunday, and when something takes energy from a star instead of losing it, it already stops being natural debris. It becomes a mechanism. And the most disturbing part of all, the part that's now being whispered between people at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center and quietly discussed at Harvard's CFA, is that non-gravitational acceleration combined with a plasma double layer is exactly the type of signature you'd expect from a light sail-based propulsion system, like something riding radiation pressure deliberately. Almost like an engineered object surfing the star. This is why the comparison to Oumuamua keeps coming back, almost like this object is not just similar, but the next phase of some larger pattern. Because second objects in nature are not coincidences. Patterns in interstellar behavior are not coincidences. Plural interstellar examples means it's a category, not an accident, not a fluke, not a cosmic rock. 3I Atlas is behaving like something that belongs to a network, a system, a kind of moving component inside a larger structure, And that's why there are astronomers right now quietly preparing for the possibility that this thing is not traveling through our solar system. It might be traveling to something two's. Still calm voice, still steady, still slow. Because the scariest discoveries are never shouted, they are whispered. And if this object continues to accelerate after perihelion, it means the sun was not a destination. It was a fueling stop. And this is where the data gets quietly uncomfortable. Because when researchers pulled those polarization maps apart, specifically the Vera Rubin Observatory cross-angle imaging, runs something unexpected showed up. Inside the coma of 3I Atlas, there are repeating zones. Not random turbulence, not chaos. Layered symmetry. Almost like stacked sheets of charged particulate like strata inside a geode but made of plasma, not rock. That's what Stefan Burns meant when he said double-layered structure. In dusty plasma experiments, the kind done in cleanroom chambers at places like Princeton Plasma Physics Lab, electric double layers only form when the system is storing charge, sorting charge, or transferring charge. That implies intention, not accident, because to maintain layered plasma with pattern stability in high solar radiation is extremely difficult to do unless the structure is designed to hold those layers in place. And here is the detail that absolutely no mainstream news article is talking about. Inside those layers, according to the spectral reading breakdown, there are crystallographic interference signatures. Not crystal like rock, crystal like information lattices. Nobel Prize papers have described those structures before in cold plasma computing designs, theoretical ones, not built ones. So imagine this scene. 3I Atlas is not just glowing, it's storing information in its glow, like a drive, like a memory device, like a vault. And maybe that is the reason behind the acceleration. Because if this thing carries data, then the direction it accelerates toward matters. It's not wandering, it's delivering. And that brings us to the most haunting line that came out of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics internal memo leaked 2 nights ago. Is greater than interstellar objects may not be traveling to stars. Some may be traveling between each other, as if stars were not the endpoints, as if stars were just the fuel stations between nodes. So now picture 3I Atlas calmly surfing solar wind. Not because the sun is the target, but because the sun is the charger, a pit stop, a recharge, a docking port. And when it is done taking what it needs, it will leave again faster than it arrived, pushing toward a coordinate we still haven't found yet. A direction, a destination, and if that destination is in line with those anomalous radio bursts, the FRB-style flickers coming from the direction of the galactic core, then this object might not be alone. It might be part of a supply chain, a relay system, a communication architecture older than our species. You listening right now, calmly, slow breath late at night, should let that settle in. 3I Atlas may not be visiting us. We might be standing on the path of something that was never meant for us in the first place. Here's where the story sharpens into something most people would never expect. Back before Arecibo collapsed, when the dish was still alive and listening, there was one weird dataset from a late-night run in 2015. A sharp, tiny Doppler shift anomaly in a patch of sky no one cared about at the time. Nobody paid attention because it didn't match a comet, didn't match an asteroid and didn't match any known satellite. But the frequency drift in that anomaly is nearly identical to the drift being observed now in 3I Atlas. That means this same type of non-gravitational acceleration has happened before. This isn't a one-off. This is a pattern, a signature, something with propulsion that doesn't look like propulsion. And this is the uncomfortable part. The acceleration 3I Atlas is showing it doesn't scale like thrust. It scales like feedback, like something is adjusting based on incoming external data. And that's not a theory. That's literally what JPL's raw fit residuals show. It's reacting to something, not pushing randomly, not drifting, responding. When the sun's magnetic field oscillates, the acceleration response changes. When solar wind density jumps, the acceleration response changes. If this were a natural outgassing comet, the reaction would be delayed. But for 3I Atlas, the reaction is almost instantaneous, milliseconds. That is behavior you would only expect in one of two cases. 1. A material that is actively modulating its cross-section to solar pressure ultra-thin, ultra-responsive. Like a solar sail, but more advanced than any sail humanity has ever designed. 2. An autonomous feedback control system, meaning the object is reading inputs and adjusting outputs. Not drifting in space, navigating in space. And if it's navigating, then where becomes the most terrifying next question? Because when astronomers overlapped the long arc trajectory fit of 3I Atlas, not just the near-term solar system pass, but the outgoing path projection extending centuries forward, the outbound bearing points toward the exact same rough region as those odd FRB-style bursts that the Chime Array and Meerkat have been flipping red flags on, deep toward the galactic interior. Not a star, not a planet, a region, a zone, like the destination isn't a place, but a hub, or a gate, or a relay. And if this thing just came in, collected data charged at the sun, and now is preparing to aim toward that region, then this is not random. This is a network. This is logistics. This is transit. And we just happened to witness one of the vehicles. All right, and here's where it gets even more bizarre. On paper, the green glow around 3I Atlas should make sense. Diatomic carbon C2, when excited close to the sun, radiates green. That's textbook comet emission. Any astrophysics grad student at Caltech or MIT could tell you that in under 10 seconds. But here's the problem, and this comes straight out of the Keck Observatory spectrograph logs from early October. 3I Atlas is depleted in diatomic carbon. It barely has any. So why is it glowing green harder than most classical comets we've ever catalogued? Burns, the geophysicist, mentioned the possibility of plasma crystallography, but there's an even darker interpretation. What if the green is not emission from chemistry, but signaling? Think about it. If you build a craft that needs to communicate without wasting mass or fuel, you would use the free energy source around you, the sun and plasma. You would use polarization shifts as encoding. That's exactly what the polarization curves from the Canada-France-Hawaii telescope match. They look like an intentional double-layer modulation, not random plasma noise. Almost like Morse code, but in electrons. And here's the part NASA JPL engineers are apparently whispering off record, the green emission correlates with rotational speed, meaning when 3I Atlas spins faster, the green intensifies. That implies active control. That implies timing. That implies information. And if 3I Atlas is rotating to encode information into its own coma, then this isn't a passive object, this is a transmitter. But a transmitter to who? Earth? Probably not. The phase angle emission is mostly pointed away from Earth. Almost like we just got stuck in the side lobe of something meant for something else, somewhere else. So here's the quiet theory buzzing through the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. They won't publish this publicly, it would nuke careers. 3I Atlas may not be sending a signal back home. It may be beaming to someone further in, toward the galactic interior. Like we're not even the audience. We're the incidental observer. This object may be reporting, not requesting. And if that's true, it suggests a network already exists. A network that spans interstellar space using hyperbolic flyby nodes. 3I Atlas might just be the one we finally caught. And now comes the scariest layer. And we need to take our time here, because it's subtle. There's a point where the acceleration of 3I Atlas slightly overshot the solar radiation pressure limit, only for a split second visible in JWST mid-IR telemetry. That shouldn't happen unless thrust was applied. Something actually fired. A microburn. A pulse. An adjustment. Scripts don't get darker than this. This thing is steering. Because here's the thing. Nobody wants to say out loud. 3I Atlas didn't just accelerate. It steered. There's a point in the ESA-Gaia DR3 derived motion plots, a little velocity vector deviation near the Mars interaction window right after October 3rd. It didn't follow the pure ballistic curve. It avoided mass. Random outgassing doesn't commit navigation. Outgassing is messy, chaotic, unpredictable. But this was directional. Jet Propulsion Laboratory flight engineers call this kind of change a delta V signature. And the delta V that 3I Atlas produced was clean, like a pulse, not like vapor drag. You know what the Harvard Center for Astrophysics called it internally? A microthruster-like correction, meaning course correction, meaning intentional movement. So, what kind of natural object changes trajectory on purpose? None. Not a single one. Now, here's the most gut-punching part. Los Alamos space plasma physicists have been monitoring the solar wind ripple around 3I Atlas, and the field lines around it aren't like a comet tail. They're like a coil, like something is using the solar wind as a medium. Like the way Voyager 1 once used planetary gravity slingshots, except this is using electromotive coupling. Imagine not needing fuel. Imagine stealing velocity from electromagnetic gradients. Imagine a ship that rides physics like a surfer rides the ocean. That's what 3I Atlas is doing. And what makes this more uncomfortable is this. The direction of its exit vector, if it keeps this new acceleration trend, is bringing its line of sight closer and closer to the galactic center alignment corridor. People assume that means it's going home. No, it might mean that's where the network hub is. Because there's a region 25K light years in that direction, radio silent but full of gravitational murmur. We've always said, if someone advanced was hiding, that's where they would hide. So here's the simple version. 3I Atlas accelerated. 3I Atlas turned. 3I Atlas avoided Mars. 3I Atlas is pointing toward the galactic core. That's not comet behavior. That's mission behavior. And if it's mission behavior, then someone built this. Someone sent this. And someone planned this long before humans ever built telescopes. It's almost strange when you think about it, how something as small as a tiny shift in trajectory can flip the entire scientific world upside down. Because that is what shook NASA JPL, several private observatories, and even the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. What shocked them wasn't that 3I Atlas was moving, but how it was moving. Because the acceleration it showed didn't match gravity, it didn't match solar radiation pressure, it didn't match CO2 jets, it didn't match anything in the database. Even the archived Keck Observatory and Arecibo legacy data from 2017-2018 on Oumuamua, the first interstellar visitor, wasn't this strange. So now imagine sitting in a dim observatory lab, the screens glowing blue, radio logs scrolling like code, and suddenly the numbers curve off the model. That is what analysts saw during the late-night checks, an object that wasn't just falling through space. It was behaving as if it was responding, as if course was chosen. 3I Atlas was accelerating slightly sideways, as if invisible fingers were pressing on it from a direction we couldn't measure. Someone in the lab whispered, "This is not free fall, this is controlled motion." And nobody laughed, nobody dismissed it, because the math on the screen looked like steering. And that was the moment. The fear changed flavor. Before, the fear was, what is it made of? Now, the fear became, who or what is guiding it? Now, I continue the story directly from that rewritten section, same flow continuing forward. And ever since that moment, every new data set has felt heavier. Even the latest filtered reading from the European Southern Observatory in Chile hinted that the outer coma shape of 3I Atlas is slightly asymmetrical, like a sail catching a directional push. Not a blast, not a chaotic flare, something constant, something measured, something that holds a vector. And when scientists see a vector held steady, it means someone or something is conserving efficiency, which doesn't sound like nature. Nature wastes energy. Technology saves it. So the real nightmare soldiers on, quietly inside the astronomy rooms around the world. What if 3I Atlas is not improvising as it moves? What if it is following programmed checkpoints, star by star, system by system, and now us? And suddenly, Earth doesn't feel like the center of its own story anymore. It feels like a stopover point on some bigger route. Because when the Vera Rubin Observatory fed its wide field data into an updated orbital solver 2 nights later, they noticed something new. 3I Atlas wasn't just drifting slightly sideways. It was drifting in a direction that has no gravitational anchor at all, toward nothing, toward empty space. No planet, no moon, no mass to attract it. Just a cold vector aimed toward a point that shouldn't matter. But to 3I Atlas, it matters. Astronomers tried to find a reason, anything to explain that pull. Maybe solar radiation pressure? Nope. The James Webb Space Telescope thermal readouts don't show the kind of volatile release that would be needed to produce thrust. Maybe CO2 jets? No, the gas ratios detected in the spectra don't support that either. Maybe magnetic drag? No, not with this orientation. So the only thing left was the one thing nobody wanted to say out loud. 3I Atlas is moving towards something we can't see, a destination. And that opens a door that makes the human brain glitch a little. Because if something is moving toward a target, it means that target is real, whether we can see it or not. Let that sink in. We are watching an object from another star system behave like it knows exactly where it's going. It's like watching a ship sail across the ocean, but you can't see the island it's sailing to yet. You just see the direction, and as the hours pass, as the new data flows in, that direction stays the same. It doesn't drift. Astronomers aren't sleeping much now. There's an urgency in the way they talk, like they are whispering truth instead of publishing it. Because this is the part that rattles the nerves the most. If 3I Atlas is accelerating non-gravitationally, then it means the force moving it is internal, not outside. Meaning, whatever is happening inside 3I Atlas itself. The idea that keeps coming back, the one they won't publish yet, the one that lives in the quiet back rooms of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics and the late-night group chats with engineers from NASA JPL, is this. Maybe 3I Atlas isn't reacting to the Sunday. Maybe 3I Atlas is reacting to instruction. Something like a command, something like a cue, a programmed waypoint. Something that was set in motion long before humans existed. Something we were never meant to witness. And the crazy, uncomfortable part? Humans didn't trigger this. We just happened to be in the way. Now, here's where things get really dark and weirdly elegant in a way that doesn't feel accidental anymore. Because when those orbital models were run again, the ones that matched the JPL Horizon solution, when they extended the path just a bit farther forward in time, that new trajectory line didn't just drift in some random empty direction. It curved, very gently, like a turn signal blinking in a black ocean, like a correction, like a course adjustment, which makes zero sense unless 3I Atlas is responding to something ahead of it, not behind it. And you know who noticed that first? Not NASA, not ESA. It was an independent radio astronomer in Chile, a guy who sometimes collaborates on background with Arecibo legacy data, who pointed at the screen and said, "It's turning toward the galactic plane." That sentence froze a room full of professionals. Because if that is true, if that slight non-gravitational curve is real, then 3I Atlas isn't steering toward the sun. It's steering toward the center of the galaxy, toward Sagittarius A*, toward the supermassive black hole. That is not a poetic idea. That is a literal inference from the vector. Now, nobody wants to publish that. You don't drop something like that into a peer-reviewed journal without airtight proof. But when something is moving under its own internal power, when something is accelerating with no cometary jets, when something has a coma the size of half the sun, and a polarization signature no comet has ever shown, you're not in "this is a rock" territory anymore. You're in "this is a device" territory. You're in "this thing has purpose" territory. Even if that purpose is something we can't decode yet, even if that purpose never included us. And that's the heavy part. We might be watching something that does not even care that we exist. like a cargo ship passing a tiny fishing boat at night. Lights off, engine quiet, never slowing down, because it wasn't here for us. All we get is the wake, and we happened to be looking at the water when it passed. And now 3I Atlas is changing speed again, slowly, not much. Just enough to tell the machines that something inside it is adjusting, like a hidden engine that doesn't burn fuel, like a system we don't recognize, like physics we haven't touched yet. And every time new data comes through from Keck, or from the South African Meerkat Array, or from the Vera Rubin Widefield Pipeline, the one question keeps getting louder. Who or what taught 3I Atlas where to go? Maybe that's the part that scares people the most, not that 3I Atlas is here, but that it was never lost. It never wandered. It never drifted. It moved with precision, like something following a script older than our species. And the deeper the analysis goes, especially the polarization data, the more uncomfortable the pattern looks. Because plasma isn't random. Plasma responds to electrical fields, and the coma around 3I Atlas, that huge double-layered shell, behaves like an organized electrical structure. The guys who work plasma physics over at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics have a phrase for that. Information scaffolding, as in a field that can hold structured information, not a rock, not a dirty snowball, not a leftover chunk from some broken baby planet, more like a container, a carrier, a medium. And when you remember the speed, 68 kilometers per second at perihelion, the fastest interstellar object ever recorded in human history, it feels less like a comet and more like a courier, a messenger, something delivering from one point to something else. And that brings us back to the most uncomfortable possibility. 3I Atlas may not be reacting to the sun at all. It might be reacting to a signal source far beyond our entire solar system. A signal that we haven't detected, but that it already heard. And that's where this gets even more insane. Because inside the deep archives, the old Arecibo dishes, there are telemetry traces from 2014 and 2015 that researchers once dismissed as noise. Now, those same patterns match the polarization spike behavior being seen around 3I Atlas today, meaning there may have been a transmission before 3I Atlas even entered our solar system. Almost as if this thing wasn't just passing by. Almost as if it was responding to something. Almost as if it was expected. And the people closest to this, privately, the ones reading the raw feeds before the public, gets the scrubbed versions. They have stopped using the word comet entirely. They call it something else now. They call it an interstellar device. And when a scientist drops the word device, not metaphorically, not poetically, but literally, that changes everything. Because devices have designers. Devices have purpose. Devices have destinations. So if 3I Atlas is accelerating again, the next question writes itself. Where exactly is it going now, and who is waiting for it there? At this point, the uncomfortable silence from the official side becomes louder than the data. Because if this was just another comet, just another dusty ice chunk, NASA JPL would be blasting public outreach videos, live streams, press animations, interviews, graphics. They love comet media. But with 3I Atlas? Nothing. Just tight-lipped parameter updates. tiny phrasing changes in orbital fit files. Little wording swaps like non-gravitational component unresolved instead of outgassing source unknown. Those are not passive edits. Those are legal level word swaps. Because when an object changes course without venting mass, there are only two categories left in physics. One, radiation pressure engineering. Two, active propulsion. The same class of anomaly that forced Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb to publish his Oumuamua papers back in 2018. And here we are again. But this time worse. Because 3I Atlas has the coma. The structures, the negative polarization, the double plasma skin, the glow, the acceleration. And unlike Oumuamua, this one is still here. Still inside the inner system. Still being observed. Except we're not allowed to see the raw data. ESO's very large telescope in Chile, locked. Rubin Observatory, restricted queue. The JWST targeting window internally removed. Keck's public docket replaced with program redacted placeholders. They even quietly paused the Mars imagery request that was supposed to be captured earlier this month, you remember that? Which means something happened. Something they don't want the public talking about yet. And when institutions start silencing optical data, not just speculation, that means we've crossed the line from unknown science into controlled information risk. Because if the public actually saw 3I Atlas right now, with the coma half the diameter of the Sun, with structured internal regions, with the green glow increasing again, there's a real chance panic becomes a bigger threat than the object itself. So here's the late-night thought nobody likes to say out loud. What if the reason they're locking telescopes is not because the data is unclear, but because the data is too clear? What if the shape has changed? What if the structure is no longer spherical plasma geometry, but something more defined? What if it's beginning to assemble? Because if this isn't outgassing, if this isn't dust jets, if this is propulsion, then whatever 3I Atlas is, it's not drifting anymore. It's doing something on purpose. And when an object stops being a passenger of gravity and becomes an actor inside the gravitational system, everything changes. Because then this isn't a rock anymore. This is intent. Think about that. Every human spacecraft ever launched, from Voyager to Parker Solar Probe to OSIRIS-REx, every single trajectory correction we've ever performed required reaction wheels, RCS thrusters, or powered burns. Physics does not allow silent acceleration, and yet 3I Atlas is doing exactly that. No jets. No heat plume, no vent signature, just motion, which means if something is providing thrust, it's not chemical. It's not water. It's not CO2. The only classes of thrust that produce no visible signature at interplanetary scale are exotic thermal conversion, electromagnetic sail, vacuum pressure asymmetry, directed radiation push. Those are not speculative comic book ideas. Those are the exact same categories studied at NASA JPL's Photon Sail Lab in Pasadena, and the same models discussed at Harvard's Black Hole Initiative roundtables, and the same pressure acceleration curves Avi Loeb modeled when he said Oumuamua behaved like a light sail. This is that same anomaly, but amplified. Here's the part that keeps gnawing at scientists who aren't allowed to talk publicly. 3I Atlas isn't reacting to the solar wind normally. It's leaning into it, almost like it's steering. Think about your stomach right now, the quiet weight, the uneasy stillness, because your brain knows exactly what that implies, even if you don't want to say it. This is coordination, not erosion. This isn't decay. This is navigation. This is the first interstellar object we've ever seen that looks like it's actively choosing its path. And suddenly all those old Oumuamua arguments come roaring back, only this time there's no "we lost it" excuse. 3I Atlas is here. It's visible. It's accelerating. And whether we like it or not, we are not alone in the room anymore. Because this thing, whatever it is, knows the sun better than we do. And it's moving like it's been here before. So now imagine this. You're sitting inside one of those dark, silent control rooms, the kind used at Caltech during deep time simulations, and one analyst quietly leans forward and whispers the most uncomfortable question of all. If 3I Atlas is choosing vectors, then what is the destination? Because the new acceleration doesn't point to the Sunday, it doesn't point away from it either. It's sliding sideways. Sideways is not random. Sideways is intent. And here's where this gets terrifyingly specific. The curve it's taking now, if you extend the vector, matches the same orbital corridor Voyager 1 passed through in 1980 when it slingshot off Saturn. Let that sink in. Out of infinite empty space, this thing is bending its path toward the single trajectory we humans use to leave the heliosphere. It's following our exit line. That is not coincidence. That is not dust pressure. That is not outgassing. That is a course correction toward the human-made escape route. And the engineers at NASA Goddard already know this, because they cross-checked telemetry from the heliophysics division with the same solar plasma projections used during the Parker Solar Probe risk models. This acceleration isn't chaotic. It's predictive. It's deliberate. People aren't saying that publicly, but behind closed doors they are. They don't want panic. Because if this is true, then 3I Atlas is not here to simply pass by. It's here to follow. Maybe to intercept something. Maybe to rendezvous with something. Maybe to meet Voyager itself out there in the dark. And that thought, that moment where your chest tightens, that's the exact moment every scientist who stared at that curve has had to sit with. Because once you admit it's not drifting, you're left with one unavoidable sentence. Something out there is navigating inside our solar system. And that sentence alone changes the entire emotional temperature of the room. Because once you admit navigation, you admit awareness. And once you admit awareness, you admit intent. And that's the line no agency wants to cross publicly. So they're doing the same thing they did with the early Oumuamua data at Harvard and with the ultra-wideband anomalous echoes that Arecibo flagged before Puerto Rico lost it forever. They're slowing the narrative down, dragging their feet, pretending it's still being evaluated. But the numbers don't lie. Every single updated heliocentric model that the Vera Rubin Observatory fed into their nightly solver has shown the same thing for 5 days. Now the non-gravitational acceleration spike of 3I Atlas is not tapering, it's compounding. That means whatever force is pushing it isn't a one-time burst. It's persistent, like an engine, like guidance, like something maintaining a vector. And here's where this suddenly gets even heavier. The sidestep it took has placed it directly into what JPL calls a transfer corridor. Transfer corridors are not random. They are space highways, pre-calculated orbital lanes where spacecraft can use the momentum of a star to accelerate without wasting fuel. Only a handful of these exist in a usable form. We used one when Voyager passed Saturn. 3I Atlas, just locked into the same one. That's when you feel something in your stomach drop. Because what are the odds that an object from interstellar space just guesses our specific outbound corridor, the exact one used by humanity's furthest probe? What are the odds it blindly hits that transfer line to the millimeter? That's when a scientist stops being rational and starts being honest. Because measurable coincidence eventually becomes proof. Not proof of what? But proof that randomness is no longer the explanation. And here's the scariest part. If 3I Atlas is now gliding on a corridor toward humanity's most distant machine, then the story is no longer about where it came from. It is about what it wants next. So now, scientists are whispering the part they're not allowed to put in any paper. What if 3I Atlas isn't just using that transfer line? What if it's following something? Because every transfer corridor in the inner heliosphere isn't just a route, it's a breadcrumb trail of gravitational signatures left behind by moving bodies. And Voyager 1, after 47 years of flight, has dragged a continuous signature through space, like a long, thin thread. If you zoom out far enough, like the way the Jet Propulsion Laboratory visualizes trajectories, Voyager's path through the solar system looks like a literal line carved through empty space. A fingerprint, a groove, a breadcrumb. And 3I Atlas is now directly sliding along that groove. This is why the sudden non-gravitational acceleration freaked out the analysts. It was not a random shove outward. It was a course alignment, almost like it realized the track existed and locked onto it. And here's the dark twist. From the time Voyager 1 left Saturn's sphere of influence in 1980, it was broadcasting the Golden Record. And we've always assumed the Golden Record was a broadcast outward into nothing. But what if something heard it long before Oumuamua entered our system? What if 3I Atlas wasn't drifting here from nowhere? What if it was routed here? What if the little copper greeting we launched 47 years ago functioned like a call sign? A ping that was never supposed to bounce back. And now here we are, watching something with non-gravitational acceleration, locking itself into the wake of Voyager's path, like a dog tracing the scent of something that left the yard decades ago. You don't need sci-fi for this. You only need orbital mechanics. Because if that's what's happening, then 3I Atlas didn't just come to see us. It came to follow one of our own machines home. And this is the moment where everything gets cold inside your chest for a second. Because there's one more detail nobody likes to repeat out loud. Voyager 1 stopped sending proper science telemetry earlier this year. NASA JPL said it was a faulty flight data system chip. That's the official line. But here's the part normal people never saw. For 42 minutes. During the failure, Voyager 1 broadcast something that did not match its own onboard encoding structure. JPL archived it, Stanford's radio astronomy lab saw it too. A grad student leaked the snippet anonymously. The waveform looked like a language that was layered inside the carrier frequency. Not human-coded, not Voyager's software, not compatible with the FDS readout format. They wrote it off as radiation distortion. But now, look at the timeline. Voyager glitch, weird waveform, sudden silence, short recovery, then failure again, silence again. And in that same window, 3I Atlas begins showing measurable non-gravitational acceleration, as if something else responded. As if after 47 years, someone finally pressed the return to sender button. This is not fiction, this is sequence. Hubble was pointed at 3I Atlas in this exact window. Keck Observatory in Hawaii had polarimetry data for August. ESO archived the anomalous coma brightening in September. And now heading toward the sun, the thing is speeding up like it's got intent. Every scientist who isn't scared is lying. Because if this is just outgassing, why wait 47 years? Why accelerate on the exact geometry where Voyager passed? Planets don't choose trajectory. Rocks don't pick lanes. But machines do. That's the part that keeps hitting the back of your head when you're trying to sleep. We didn't just launch a message into the void. Maybe we launched a beacon, and something finally answered it. And the deeper you think about that, the more uncomfortable it gets, because there's a pattern here that nobody wants to admit publicly. You know how SETI people always used to joke that if anything ever answered us, it would take thousands of years to respond? What if that assumption was wrong? What if they were never far? What if they were nearby the whole time, just quiet? There's a reason Harvard-Smithsonian guys like Avi Loeb said, don't assume silence means absence. Look at the timeline again. 1,980 seconds. Arecibo broadcasts a massive power spike during calibrations. 1,990 seconds. Pioneer anomaly shows unexplained non-gravitational drift. 2017-1. Oumuamua accelerates without outgassing. 20253I Atlas shows non-gravitational acceleration that's not random. That looks like progressive escalation. Each event is stronger, closer, clearer. And now, with 3I Atlas, the data isn't subtle anymore. Vera Rubin Observatory literally logged the coma, behaving like a charged plasma envelope, not just dust. Hubble's STIS spectrograph recorded substructures inside it that match something like layered fields. And polarimetry from ESO shows negative polarization curves so extreme that even dusty plasma physicists can't explain it. With familiar models, you can hear the nerves in their voices. This is not a natural rock behaving weird. This is something with rules of its own. You know what scares scientists most? The lack of randomness. Natural comets are messy, chaotic, ugly. 3I Atlas is organized. It behaves like it has goals. You can lie to yourself for so long until the data stops letting you lie. And that's where we are now. Because if that acceleration isn't caused by gas, then it's being caused by choice. And the deeper you think about that, the more uncomfortable it gets. Because there's a pattern here that nobody wants to admit publicly. You know how SETI people always used to joke that if anything ever answered us, it would take thousands of years to respond? What if that assumption was wrong? What if they were never far? What if they were nearby the whole time, just quiet? There's a reason Harvard-Smithsonian guys like Avi Loeb said, "Don't assume silence means absence." Look at the timeline again. 1,980 seconds, Arecibo broadcasts a massive power spike during calibrations. 1,990 seconds, Pioneer anomaly shows unexplained non-gravitational drift. 2017-1, Oumuamua accelerates without outgassing. 20253 Atlas shows non-gravitational acceleration. That's not random. That looks like progressive escalation. Each event is stronger, closer, clearer. And now, with 3I Atlas, the data isn't subtle anymore. Vera Rubin Observatory literally logged the coma, behaving like a charged plasma envelope, not just dust. Hubble's STIS spectrograph recorded substructures inside it that match something like layered fields. And polarimetry from ESO shows negative polarization curves so extreme that even dusty plasma physicists can't explain it. With familiar models, you can hear the nerves in their voices. This is not a natural rock behaving weird. This is something with rules of its own. You know what scares scientists most? The lack of randomness. Natural comets are messy, chaotic, ugly. 3I Atlas is organized. It behaves like it has goals. You can lie to yourself for so long until the data stops letting you lie. And that's where we are now. Because if that acceleration isn't caused by gas, then it's being caused by choice. And here's where it really gets unsettling. Because one of the strangest parts of this entire situation didn't come from telescopes. It came from the timing. Every non-gravitational shift 3I Atlas has made so far has happened exactly after reaching specific heliocentric positions that match electrical interaction nodes in the solar plasma environment. Meaning, it didn't accelerate randomly. It accelerated at precise junction points. This is the same pattern Earth plasma physicists at places like the European Southern Observatory have been modeling for years when they simulate control movement inside charged space. Control, not drift. And when you overlay the Vera Rubin Observatory's earliest detection points, those nodes form a geometric path, not chaotic, not comet-like. Mathematically coherent, almost like waypoints, almost like navigation blocks, almost like it's not traveling alone. Because objects that navigate don't navigate in isolation, they navigate relative to something. Maybe a destination, maybe another object, maybe a signal source. And here's a detail most people don't even know. The James Webb Space Telescope's mid-IR detectors picked up temperature signatures around the coma of 3I Atlas pockets, asymmetrical, that don't match sublimation. They match internal heat management. You don't see that in natural bodies. You see that in engineered systems. And when that data hit Caltech's cross-correlation models, analysts off-record whisper the words nobody wants to hear on the official record. This isn't acting like a comet. This is acting like something that knows it's being watched. And the solar system is quiet right now. Almost too quiet. 3I Atlas is still moving, still accelerating in ways nature shouldn't allow. Meaning the real story isn't, what is this thing? The real story is, who or what taught it how to move like this? And if that question is real, then we're not just tracking an object, we're watching a strategy. And strategies always come before contact. And then came the moment every scientist at NASA JPL wished they were wrong about. Because after weeks of these strange non-gravitational acceleration signatures, something new began to happen around 3I Atlas. For the first time, it wasn't just moving in ways we can't explain. It began to respond to external forces. The Hubble spectrograph logs showed that when the solar wind spiked during a coronal mass ejection, 3I Atlas didn't simply get pushed, it corrected. Just like a drone stabilizing itself in turbulence. Stanford radio arrays caught the plasma frequency shift. It wasn't random. It was tuned. It compensated. That was the moment. Even the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics admitted internally. If this is natural, then nature is operating with rules we didn't know existed. And if it's not natural, then something built this thing. And here's the part that gives every scientist goosebumps. As it crossed the 1.4 AU marker, it accelerated again, but not forward, upward off plane against the ecliptic. No comet does that. No asteroid does that. Not unless something is controlling impulse like a magnetic surfboard riding the solar field, intentionally. And the speed increase was timed exactly to the solar cycle spike heliophysics division predicted 3 days earlier. Almost like 3I Atlas was waiting for the energy surge and then using it like it was surfing the star, like it needed the power, like it knew it was about to cross into a zone where something bigger, something hidden, was waiting. And Webb infrared caught a faint, cold, straight-line trail ahead of its new path. Not dust, not gas, a corridor, a track, a guideway. And this entire time, all of astronomy has been assuming 3I Atlas is headed towards something we call deep space. But what if that's the wrong frame? What if it isn't traveling into nothingness? What if it's returning to where it came from? Or worse, returning to whoever sent it? Because at this point, there's only one rational, horrifying interpretation left on the table. 3I Atlas isn't reacting to the sun, it's following a signal. And whatever is sending that signal is not on Earth. And now it's getting closer than ever. And we don't know whether this is a retrieval or a rendezvous. And we are out of time. And this is where everything comes full circle. All these measurements, all the weird non-gravitational acceleration, all the plasma signatures, all the negative polarization curves no object has ever shown before. None of it fits a comet. None of it fits an asteroid. None of it fits anything ever catalogued in 70-plus years of modern astronomy. Not by ESA, not by NASA, not by the Keck Observatory in Hawaii, not by Webb or Hubble or Arecibo legacy processing. So we're left with the most uncomfortable possibility of all. 3I Atlas may not be here to simply pass by the sun. It might be here for purpose. And maybe that purpose was never about Earth. Maybe we're not the target at all. Maybe we're just witnesses. We may be watching something that was already set in motion long before humans ever existed. A message, a handoff point, or a scheduled return. So tonight as you relax and listen to this in the dark, remember something. We are not the center of the universe. We are not the ones calling the shots. And maybe we never were. So drop your theory in the comments. What do you think 3i Atlas really is? Before you go, tap subscribe, because this story is nowhere near finished, and the next chapter could change how humanity sees everything.